All right, so today we're going to be doing a side-by-side comparison between Lattafa's Sehr, which is this fragrance here, and we're going to be comparing this to Tom Ford's Vanilla Sex. So from everything that I've seen, that's basically what this particular fragrance is cloning, is Tom Ford's Vanilla Sex. So I have gotten my hands on a sample of that fragrance, and we're just going to be going over, which one of these is the better smelling fragrance, at least in my opinion, and then also, how close Sehr is to the original Tom Ford. So as far as the notes go for Tom Ford's Vanilla Sex, it is a pretty simple note breakdown. In the top notes, you have bitter almond, and then in the mid, you have vanilla and floral notes. And then in the base notes, you have vanilla absolute, ultra vanille, tonka bean, and then sandalwood. Now for Lattafa Sehr, that is going to be slightly different. So for Sehr, you get bitter almond and cinnamon in the top notes. In the mid, you get akigala wood, pomerose, and jasmine. And then in the base, you get vanilla absolute, tonka bean, and amber. So there is a slight sort of difference between the two fragrances in terms of the note breakdown. And that also kind of translates into like a slightly sort of different smell and overall feel, in my opinion, when it comes to how each one of these sort of come across. Now, as far as like the presentation goes, like I said in the previous video where I mentioned this fragrance, the presentation is actually nice, but the quality on this bottle is not very good. So just right off the bat, this little plaque here that says Sehr Lattafa, it's not really centered correctly, so it's kind of like crooked. And then also the cap that comes off here, I mean, it is a very heavy metal sort of cap, but the little insert in here that kind of sticks around the collar, this was like completely off, and like, the glue had basically came off of this when I initially got the fragrance, and it was also leaking as well. Also, basically when you take this part off, you have to hold this little part here, because if not, you can see there, it kind of comes off. So you have to hold this down and then basically take it off like that. So, again, not the best quality on this particular bottle, but I mean, for the price point that it goes for, you can kind of expect certain things like that to happen. All right. Now, as for the smell on these two, they are pretty similar, but to me, this doesn't necessarily seem to be like, it's definitely not going to be like a 90% or better clone, at least in my opinion. This is more kind of like, I would say more of a twist, to Tom Ford's Vanilla Sex. But this is still very good. Now, when you initially spray the two fragrances on, at least in my opinion, the Lattafa comes off as being a lot more sweeter than the Tom Ford Vanilla Sex. Also, the Vanilla Sex, just the way that the vanilla and the almond come off in this fragrance, it seems to be higher quality and more natural smelling than what the Lattafa is. The Lattafa, like I said, is definitely sweeter and just more kind of, I don't know, artificial or synthetic smelling. But to me, it's not necessarily a bad thing. So the Tom Ford, at least in my opinion, the feeling that I get from that fragrance is it comes off as being a little bit more kind of powdery and feminine, to at least to me anyway. Both on skin and when you smell it on like a tester strip. Whereas the Lattafa, this to me comes off as a little bit more closer to the unisex side. Now, I do think that this still does, kind of lean a little bit feminine, a little bit. I would say, if you're someone who isn't really into vanilla scents, like if you're a guy and you already think vanilla scents are like feminine, then you probably wouldn't like this one either. But I mean, I tend to enjoy vanilla scents. They're definitely good scents to wear during this time of the year where it's cooler. And this, to me, the Lattafa seems to be a little bit more unisex to me. It doesn't come off as powdery as what the Tom Ford does. Also, the Tom Ford, at least to me anyway, it does seem to be a little bit stronger on the florals. Once you get to like the dry down of the fragrance, the florals seem to be a little bit more pronounced, and they do also kind of add to having like more of a sort of like a powdery type of feel. So, that is something also that I don't necessarily enjoy out of the Tom Ford fragrance. Like I said, I can definitely admit that the Tom Ford is, again, the more higher quality, smelling fragrance. It does smell a little bit more expensive. It does smell higher end. It does smell, you could say a little bit more elegant than what the Lattafa does. But I think just in terms of, my taste or just kind of like overall mass appeal, to me, the Lattafa is a little bit better. And also, to me, the Lattafa makes a little bit more sense, I would say, for most people, just off the simple fact that the Lattafa, it does come pretty close to the Tom Ford. I would say probably anywhere from about 80 to 85% close to it. And it's only a fraction of the cost. I'm not exactly sure how much the Tom Ford costs, but I'm pretty sure for like a 50 ml of the Tom Ford, it's got to be over like $300. So, just for this scent profile in general, I don't think that this scent profile is worth that much, because that's a lot of money. Obviously you have, higher end vanilla scents or, vanilla scents that come from higher end houses that are kind of expensive, like Initio's Absolute Aphrodisiac. And that one still costs a lot of money, but you can typically find that one on discounter sites for, just under $200 a lot of times. And you're getting more, fragrance within the bottle with that fragrance as well. So to me, this Tom Ford Vanilla Sex, scent profile in general, it's not going to be like anything that blows you away. It's a very, I would say, kind of average, sort of run-of-the-mill type of vanilla scent that does lean a little bit feminine, but definitely not something that's worth, $300-400, to smell like this. So, I think for most people, Sehr is going to make a lot more sense. Now, also, one thing that I had been seeing from, like other people that were talking about the way that Vanilla Sex smelled was how in the dry down, it kind of gives off like the smell that smells like pee. I didn't necessarily get that on my skin, but I think I can kind of see where maybe that would come across that way on some other people's skin, just, based on their chemistry. This does seem to be a scent that, you need to test out and try before you really kind of commit to like a full bottle, especially if we're talking about the original Tom Ford Vanilla Sex. And even I would say if you can find a website that, or a person that is decanting this, I would even say try to get a sample of this first before you just get a full bottle. Now, this was sent to me by Intense Oud. And I believe on Intense Oud, this goes for like around $50, I believe. So, it's not the cheapest Lattafa fragrance, but it's not like super expensive either. And again, I feel like for this to come about 80 to 85% close to the original, this is still a very good value fragrance. It's just not necessarily going to be the safest blind buy vanilla fragrance out there. All right. Now for the performance, The performance on Sehr is actually quite good. So to me, Sehr, I mean, it's, in terms of the projection, it was about the same as like the Vanilla Sex. There are some slight differences though with that. Vanilla Sex seemed to be a little bit more kind of diffusive, whereas this came off a little bit more thicker, but I felt like it wasn't like one was stronger than the other, basically. Now for the longevity on this was actually quite good. So this I easily get, you know, around 8 to 10 hours or so of total longevity, whereas the Vanilla Sex, that was more kind of like around 7. So that the Tom Ford definitely kind of fizzled out a little bit sooner than what the Lattafa did. And then as far as, you know, just my closeness rating on this fragrance, I would say this is, again, anywhere from 80 to 85% close to Vanilla Sex. So, you know, definitely not the closest, you know, to the original, but it's not like completely far off either. And, you know, for the price that you pay for this, I do feel like it is absolutely worth it, especially if you're someone who likes the Vanilla Sex, you know, scent profile. Again, this is just going to be a little bit more sweeter. You know, it's not going to be as powdery and as feminine leaning, you know, in my opinion, as what the Tom Ford Vanilla Sex is. And I mean, overall, I do think that this is a solid vanilla fragrance. So as far as my just overall rating on this fragrance, I would give this one like a solid like 7.5 to 8 out of 10. You know, I would say this isn't going to be for everyone. I do think that you are going to have to be someone who actually likes vanilla. So if you're not into vanilla scents, then you would absolutely want to skip this one. If you're not into scents that have almond in them, you'll also want to skip this one as well. Because, you know, both of the fragrances are definitely heavy on almond. You know, again, the almond does smell, you know, definitely more kind of realistic and higher quality in the Tom Ford. And it definitely comes off as just being a lot more sweeter and synthetic in this. But, you know, again, it does smell pretty good, at least to me anyway. I do enjoy this one. The almond in this kind of more so reminds me of like the almond that you get in, what is it? Shagaf Oud Tonka, I believe, from Swiss Arabian. That's kind of what the almond in this fragrance reminds me of. So yeah, man, I would say about a solid 7.5 to 8 out of 10 is what I would give this one overall. And, you know, again, this one for the price, it is worth it, you know, for sure, if you are a fan of Tom Ford's Vanilla Sex. It just won't give you the exact same experience as what you get with Vanilla Sex. All right. So that is my take on Lattafa Sehr. You know, like I said, definitely shouts out to Intense Oud for sending this fragrance over to me for review. And I'll have a link to where you can actually purchase this one from Intense Oud. So definitely check that out in the description. All right. Also, if you're brand new to the channel, do me a favor, go ahead and subscribe. And also, if you agree with my assessment of how close this fragrance comes to the original fragrance, definitely let me know in the comments. Also, just let me know your thoughts overall about Lattafa Sehr. And definitely, man, check out the links in the description as well. All right. So that's Jamar from Vegas Scents, and I'll see you on the next video.